we're doing things a bit different. We're not having our regular Misfit Founders podcast, although it's kind of like a conversation still. But there's a topic that I think has come into the spotlight in a lot of my podcast discussions, which is the whole co-founding thing. And I think it's a very I would call it a soft controversial topic.
Okay.
Not full-on controversial, like, do I bootstrap or do I get investment and so on. The co-founder topic, I have a lot of experience with it, like a lot of bad and positive experience with co-founders. More
what
bad.
They look like?
Physically.
I believe you.
I'm not making them up, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Actually been physical human beings. But also when I talk to founders, I feel that there's a split of people that have co-founders and, they don't see it any other way. People that don't have co-founders and would love some because they have to bear the world on their shoulders. And there's also a small portion of solo founders, that they don't see themselves working with anyone else in the co-founding team. And I find that very interesting because I think I wouldn't want not to have a co-founder in a
Someone
sense.
else to be there with you.
Yeah, and I'm running a business now, Masterwork Films, and I'm the primary co-founder there, but I have a core team that I still call, the co-founders.
The co-founding team?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm like...
You're quite generous with the term.
Yeah.
Where some people may be more protective over it.
I don't know, if it feels like if you're on your own, it can be lonely, but some people don't mind being on their own and doing stuff. But in the same time, you have to handle so many things on your own that it slows you down.
Yeah.
Although we hear nowadays stories about, the first business that reached $1 million in ARR with just a solo founder with no team and whatsoever, because technology and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think in general, it is quite difficult to build a lucrative business on your own fast.
Both physically and emotionally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can say, well, you can rely on your partner, your family for emotional, kind of like emotional support.
But they don't quite get it, as in the way that a business partner, a co-founder, would get it in the same way.
That's the thing, right? So it also depends on who you're talking to and what kind of partner. Because, like, for example, if your partner does not care of that subject, that industry, that topic,
or if they don't know about it,
they can kind of like pet you down, right? Like, it's okay, so you'll be fine and stuff, but they don't understand it, or they don't.
The reality is it might not be fine.
yeah, exactly. So I'm not on the fence. I'm 100% on the side of, if you can get a co-founder and work with someone that can help you get the business where you're supposed to. And even if it's not in the shape of a co-founder, get advisors, bring people on that can help you build that business up, and people with experience in certain areas. Because building a company, a business in whatever industry, is a complex piece of machinery. Working machinery. You have a lot of components. Yeah. You can't be an expert in absolutely everything. And you can hire people, and I keep on saying this to people, and it seems like some don't really get it, which is, your team, your employees will not care as much as you care, and your co-founder or your shareholders, stakeholders will care about the success of and the well-being of your business.
In different
Sure,
ways.
they will care, right? But not staying awake at night as you do.
And I guess it also depends on how the business even starts, right? Because sometimes there'll be a natural co-founder relationship that emerges from, those conversations with, say, a friend, family member, acquaintance, whoever, and you realize you have that in common. So maybe then eventually you'll start to build something together. So like the organic co-founder.
Yeah, that kind of like takes us to the next topic is like, okay, you decide that you want to build something with someone. Who do you partner up with? How do you get them? And you're right, one of probably the perfect case scenario is you have someone in your life, be it in your personal or professional life, that you've been dealing with, working with, partnering up with, collaborating with, and eventually it organically goes towards, we should start something together. Or you're sharing the same, you're sharing vibes and thoughts about this specific topic. Both of you are quite passionate about it, and eventually decide, we should build a business around this.
Yeah.
And that's quite organic. The risk there is, if you do it, if you have that conversation, that moment of, we should build something around this, with someone that you've never worked with before or collaborated with in a professional setting before, that excitement, that ecstatic feeling at the beginning will slowly fade away. It's the reality of it, right? You're always going to have that feeling of, oh, this is my thing, this is my business, my baby. But over time, it becomes a job. Every single startup in the early days is like this exciting stuff everyone's doing. Oh, we don't care about, what the terms, rules and stuff. Let's do stuff. This is so exciting. But eventually, as your ducks get into row when it comes to having a stable product, starting to get to market fit, starting to get customers and so on, that becomes a job. It becomes your role. And it feels more like a job than the actual, hacking and playing your playpen type of stuff. Yeah. So then you reach that point, and by the time you reach that point, there's a high risk that you realize, I'm not compatible with my business partner.
Sure. Different work ethics,
yeah,
approaches to...
I think we're stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah.
Right? That's one. And then, you might also not have placed the proper terms from the get-go with them, and you wind up kind of like feeling resentment because you're spending way too much time invested in this, and they're somewhere out there, sometimes putting some time, sometimes just being AMI, right? AMI? Missing in MIA, missing in action.
Yeah.
I'm so terrible with acronyms.
No, it makes sense. But yeah, of course, like when you're in the wraps of setting up a new, really exciting venture, something that comes with all of the challenges alongside that at the beginning of the journey. Yeah, who's thinking about the relationship?
Yeah, and that's why I said I had good experiences and terrible experiences. And good experiences, honestly, so far have been two.
Yeah, what were they like?
Up until recently, I kept on saying one, because it was the company that probably a lot of people that watch Misfit Founders and have been know my story is Jexo and Nikki, my life partner, which we built a business together. And that was the first time ever that I've had a co-founder that I got along with. Sure, we did have a lot of our differences and such, but we worked together previously, so I knew how we operate together, our work dynamic. So we've kind of like applied that into our business as well. And then the next one is Masterwork, where I have a couple of team members that are kind of like my co-founding team.
Yeah.
Which I think all of this decades of experience in building businesses and failing with co-founders, then finding a co-founder that I really work well with, Nikki, putting together a team that was really the right team in a sense, kind of aged me in understanding what I'm looking for
Sure.
in a business partner.
Yeah, it's fast track to
Yeah,
learning,
exactly.
right?
And also, I think I'm at a stage mature enough to know that even if someone looks perfect, I still need to lay down the house rules
Yeah, have
on
those conversations
on
at the
how to
beginning.
operate. Yeah, and really establish a work a frame for working with each other. Make sure that you're compatible. It's two simple stages to this. One, make sure that you're compatible with the
Personalities,
personality, skills, work
mindset, work
dynamic.
ethic.
Exactly. And then second, set the house rules. So
Yeah.
lay down in a written legal agreement what the two or three or four of you responsibilities, effort, time, input, and so on will be, because that's your secret recipe to basically ensuring that you have a successful marriage with your co-founders.
The secret sauce.
The secret sauce.
Secret.
And the thing is that like there's quite a few examples out there of not doing that and still being successful.
Statistically, it will happen sometimes that
Yeah.
the natural perfect combination will come about, or without having to have that intention baked into your co-founder strategy. But chances are it's less likely, I would say, without conscious effort.
And you know what? The thing is that I bet you that a lot of co-founders don't even realize that their business, their startup is falling apart because they're not compatible. Because not everyone's so self-aware, right? To say
they think it's their business idea, they think it's their product.
Yeah, they think
it's their team, maybe.
Yeah, their team, or that they think that they didn't took the right decisions in terms of funding certain initiatives and so on. And
they're not looking inside.
Exactly. And deep down inside, it might be just the fact that, you might have one co-founder that comes up with some strategy ideas and the other co-founder is a yes man.
Okay.
Right? Or you both have the same skill set and you're not covering a wider ground of skills, and you live in this bubble of, because you don't have the knowledge of, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you live in this bubble and you're like, well, we just failed because things didn't work out, we didn't do ABC, but you're not realizing that, well, we didn't have the skill set and the knowledge between the two of us to do this, to deliver this.
I mean, what's the point in having a co-founder who's the exact copy of you, right?
Yeah. But that goes back to what you said, which is like the organic way, which is people saying, oh, we were passionate about this topic, let's just do it. And I see that, and I've had so many examples. I remember when I was working in the software engineering world, of two software engineers coming up with an idea and building it, but they both had the same skills. No one did marketing, no one did sales. They build it, and I'm guilty of that. Building something and just putting it out there and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that you're not compatible with your co-founder. Oh, you might be compatible because you share the same skill set in a sense, or you're friends, so you realize, well, we're compatible because look how passionate we're about this, the trait that we do. But fundamentally, the reason why you would get the main reason why you would get a co-founder is to help unload some of the stuff, some of those components of this complex mechanism, which is a running business, and share that. And if none of you want to take some of the other stuff, the marketing, the sales, the people, HR, hiring, this and that, then
I mean, you think of it like, well, if we're talking very generally, there might be someone who's the face of the business, the face of the brand, and then there might be the one who's so that's the people person, the communicator, and then there might be the brains behind it. Although I would say both of them are the brains, but maybe the one that's more technically minded, the one that's building, say if it's a tech platform or anything more physical, and I think that excelling in both of those areas is fairly rare, and often that's when co-founder relationships, co-founder partnerships are the obvious choice, filling the skills gap. or enhancing each other's skills, complementing each other's skill sets.
You should always have, the bare minimum is your technical individual and your sales individual. That's the bare minimum that you should have in a team. And honestly, most of the time you could do without the technical.
You think?
Yeah. Because especially nowadays with technology, with no code, low code, with, you can hire a team remote somewhere to build a I don't usually recommend this for for you to have a co-founding team that has zero technical skills and you're building a technical product, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a recipe for disaster more often than not, but it's not impossible to do.
Yeah.
Whereas the other way around is a lot harder. If you only have technical co-founders and no sales and so on, well, you have to start somewhere. You have to start selling. And how are you going to do that if you don't know? Because you can't afford to pay, especially for an early startup, you can't afford to pay a consultant, an advisor in sales.
And maybe expect for them to have the same level of knowledge of the product that you have once you built it.
Yeah. So it's a lot harder if you're technical and you don't have a sales and marketing counterpart. It's still not preferable, but I think it's easier if you're sales and marketing and not have the technical part. I know that's going to probably ruffle some feathers out there, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like a good salesman can sell anything.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
Salesperson, yeah, sorry. A salesperson can sell anything, but when it comes to having and I've kept on making this remark because I was there, I was the technical person that had no knowledge of how to sell and how to get discovered as a solution. And I kept on making this analogies, building a product, being the technical part and not having any marketing and sales capability is like having the cure for cancer in your bedroom but having no idea how to share it with the right people.
Yeah.
Right? It's futile.
Lots of potential and
yeah. But I think with how you get your partners, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but I've kept on recommending a process where you actually go through a similar process with your co-founder, like you would go through a hiring process with someone, which is you have various stages of discovery to get to understand if the two of you are compatible.
Yes, I hear of this referred to as like co-founder dating.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Say if it's not in that organic way where it's you and as someone in your life who you've decided to go on this adventure with, this journey with, it's someone who maybe you've met at an event or some other way where you're actively looking for your co-founder. Co-founder dating.
So what?
Understanding each other.
So you know of the co-founder dating process or whatever method. What kind of stages of that is? Because I've kept on recommending this before even hearing the concept of co-founder dating, and I'm curious if it's the same thing. So you basically meet someone. And then what do you do afterwards?
Yeah, so obviously from the get-go, from that initial conversation, you'll have a judgment. You'll get a sense of their vibe in that setting, in that particular setting. Maybe take it out of that setting, something a bit more relaxed, more informal. Your coffee, your trip to the pub, in a different location, different environments. And you'll see different aspects of their personality, see how you get along. Is it natural? Is it something where there's something there, but you might need to decide on where you draw the lines with each other? if there's going to be someone who has a final say or not, kind of navigation. And then there's also having those tough conversations straight up, because it's easier to have the difficult conversations before you enter this than to leave it too late, and then you don't know how to, or you don't know maybe their communication styles, how they take on feedback, how they give feedback, read feedback, criticism, creative disagreements. I think having the tough conversations, using the analogy of the marriage prenup, right? The co-founder prenup, saying, this is the way that we're going to do this. I also liken it to like learning styles. So, someone's a visual learner, someone's an auditory learner. Say I work in this way when it comes to conflict. I work in this way when I want to give feedback, when I have disagreement. So having those conversations early on, I think, is a very important part of dating your co-founder, for lack of a better term.
Oh yeah, you should always be super transparent and have discussions and conversations about specific key attributes and collaboration kind of like touch points, right? I also think that is more than not, more often than not enough. And the reason why is, I'll give you an example.
Push them in at the deep end.
So you have to test the waters, because conversations are great, right? But I can tell you the amount of times that I was, sitting down with someone and we were talking about doing this thing, and let's have a couple of conversations, which is great to see how we would do it and see how we would work together and so on. But when you're in the midst of it and you're excited about an opportunity and potentially doing something together, you tend to, it depends on the person, right? But some, like myself, tend to oversimplify things.
Okay.
Right? And think that certain aspects I'm okay with, and the answer to some questions might be skewed and different just because I'm in that euphoric moment, right? Sure. Like white lies and things like that. When you start dating someone and they say, oh, I like I don't know, horse riding.
Yeah, best thing ever, right?
Yeah, and you're in that euphoric moment. You're like, oh, yeah, I like that as well. It's cool. And you haven't done that ever.
Yeah.
You might not even be interested in it, but because they're interested in it, you might be interested in it. It's that kind of like effect, that in love effect, right?
So many of these funny analogies we're using here, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's the same thing for that analogy applies to co-founders, exactly. Right? It's because, especially when we were talking earlier about the whole, I'm so excited about this, yeah, let's do this, and so on, right? So it might be the same, because if you're going to networking events and you meet interesting people and you take them out for coffees and so on. If they say yes, if you're kind of like telling them about potentially partnering up for an idea, they might get excited and so on. And then you also don't know that person that well, and they might say things just to be more likable. Mm-hmm. You can still kind of like see signals, cues, verbal cues and emotional cues that you can extract from conversations, but it's
easy to miss, or
exactly. You have to be a bit of a psychologue to be able to sat there and analyze that person and say, oh, actually I don't like because they raised their eyebrow like that when I said that thing, right? So I think there needs to be practice, and I think this is one of the stages that are a bit more cumbersome, but it has to happen in order for both of you to make sure that you're compatible. Work on a small prototype. Work together for a month, right? It's a big decision that you're going to take to sign papers with this person and open a company with someone that you met a couple of times and you spoke and you seem like you vibe off of each other. But it's a big...
It is. going back to the, like, you know, marriage analogy, and, you know, people referring to their businesses as their babies, you know, it could be seen as like a marriage, like creating a child. But it's also so much more than that, as you said, with you know, the legal aspects to it. You're often, you know, obviously incorporating a company together, becoming, you know, jointly responsible for this thing, often in some ways, like, you know, financially, you know,
Yeah.
financially interdependent, somewhat tied. It's a huge commitment. It's not something that, you know, depending on the conversations, it might be, you know, off the back of the napkin kind of calculations, but really it has to be done intentionally.
And it's funny because, you know, when it comes to, because we keep on doing this analogy with romance, but, you know, when it comes to your life partner, you spend quality time in figuring out if they're the one. But when it comes to business, you jump in bed with someone and basically get married to them the next day, which is kind of like
Yeah.
crazy to think about,
Yeah.
right? This is, you know, yeah, okay, it's their life partner, it's a lot more important, but your business partner is important as well, to make sure that you get the right person,
It's
because
beyond just yourselves, right? If you grow a team,
yeah,
that team is also dependent on your co-founder relationship.
yeah, exactly. So not only that you're impacting, potentially negatively impacting the next 5 years, 10 years of your lives, right? Of the two of you or three of you, whatever, how many business partners are,
The team,
but
your
also team.
customers,
Yeah, exactly. So
your investors.
yeah, so your that moment in time when you decide to put the two of you together can have like a crazy ripple
Yeah.
effect,
Yeah.
positive or negative. So then why rush into, that's why I feel like a lot of, especially young startup founders, they rush into things.
Yeah.
Oh, let's do it. Oh, incorporate the company.
The
Put sign off. Do
enthusiasm.
this. Let's do it. Let's push a prototype out there. Let's see what people think. We're partners and so on. Take the time to figure out if you should be doing this with this person. And you can do that again by running through an exercise, right? Spend a month working daily or every 2 or few days with them. Collaborate, prototype stuff, sketch, assign tasks between the two of you, keep yourselves accountable, see how that kind of like collaboration, that kind of like relationship works, and not just on all of the phases of, let's say, the life cycle of whatever you're building, a product or whatnot. So because it's cool to be like, oh, let's do a workshop together where we come up with solutions, and you might be vibing off each other in that workshop. Oh yeah, we should do this. We work so great together. But then when it comes to the execution part, you
Yeah.
realize that you bump heads all the time. So you have to do this kind of like engagement period,
Yeah.
right? For a period of time where you go through all of those phases.
This analogy could go on forever.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's the same thing. Like, for example, you know, you're getting married and you never lived with your partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm wary of the other side of this, in that often, especially, you know, younger, less experienced early stage founders, you could say, you know, there's also, I mean, in any case, actually, there's that time pressure. They want to do it before anyone else does it. They want to do it, I guess, to an extent, while it's still fresh. So striking that balance between harnessing the enthusiasm and the drive and the desire to do it before anyone else is doing it.
but that's
It's not
why,
always a bad thing, though, is it?
yeah, but that's why,
First mover.
if you're in a rush, rather than co-founder dating, pick that one person that you know you can work well with, right? Someone that you worked with in the previous company with, and you worked really well together. Someone in your family or your friends group that you've collaborated on some, I don't know, some hobbies or some stuff that and worked really well. You worked really well together. So I'm not saying that that's the only, but if you don't have that option,
Yeah.
then you need to spend time
Absolutely.
and not super rush into it. Or by all means, go ahead and rush into it, but be aware that there is a significant risk that you incur by doing that.
Yeah, got to make sure that you're playing to your partnership's strengths and minimizing the weaknesses. Nikki Ko calls it the competitive advantage that a great partnership can bring to your business.
Oh yeah.
If you harness it right, then it can be part of your USP. But and then the other side of that, as you were saying, if it's a friend, if it's a family member, if it's an old colleague that you might now call a friend, it's the danger zone of that relationship, risking that relationship when you build something and it doesn't quite go to plan.
But then that's the next step. The next phase comes into play, which is make sure that you set the house rules, right? And we're not talking here about verbal. Yeah, I do this, you do that, and we agreed to spend part time for 20 hours per week each. Okay, yeah, cool. No, and this is hard for some people, right? Because I've talked to people, and the first question about this, and the first question was like, how do I bring this about? Because especially if you're talking about friends, family, ex-colleagues, and so on,
people you hold dear.
yeah, there's a chance that if you raise the not the concern, the topic of, let's put together a legal agreement between the two of us that lays down the rules, each spends this many hours per week on our business, I have these objectives, you have those objectives, and so on, that it might be seen like, oh, but what, do you not trust me? Right? And that's the one thing that I've kept on getting from people that I talk to that want to start a business with someone that they know, but they're a bit shy of going with a legal document to them and saying, because they're concerned that the individual might think that, oh, you're insulting me because you think you're not trusting me and stuff, which again I think they're overthinking it. I think a lot of them are overthinking it because it's a legal document with someone that but I don't think a lot of people will mind that, because it's the delivery, it's how you position it. It's not like, oh, I don't trust you, but like, hey, we need to make sure that you're protected, and that we don't get into fuzzy waters later down the road because we didn't really agree on who's doing what.
It's not that I don't trust you, it's that I value you, I value the friendship, I value the relationship, I want to protect this because that's something that that person holds dear. And yes, when you talk about in the analogy of the prenup, just like before you get married, you might think, oh, do I want to start on this kind of foot talking about if things go sour? But I believe many people do say it can be a good idea. But when you mention the legal agreements, I think that can scare people because of how we view lawyers and the law, and keeping everything in a particular way. But that's where the flexibility of a task agreement can come in, an Agile Partnership, whereby if, say, you don't necessarily deliver on everything that you've committed to, that's okay, because your reward, your responsibility, your equity based on that delivery is adjusted depending on what you deliver.
And I think that's what, and you're right, that's a very important topic. I think a lot of people think, when they think of agreements, is like, when I'm bringing you agreement, oh, your role is this and your responsibility is signed on the dotted line, people think, whoa, hold on a second, because what if I sign and we dispute and I lose all of my...
Yeah.
But that's not the case, because with
Exactly. It's not the case.
agreements, you can set up a structure where over time you get allocated some of that stake in the company, right? And it's just like, let's say 6 months down the line, you've had 20%, 30% of your stake in the company already allocated, so you have that.
Yeah.
But if, let's say, at that point you're like, you know what, I don't want to do it anymore, or I'm not being able to handle these things, I have other commitments and so on, if you set the agreement right, you're still left off with that stake that you've worked hard for. I think that's one of the things that people don't realize a lot of the times when they're presented with an agreement of rules.
Yeah.
And they think, well, if I sign this, what if I spend 1 year, 2 years, and after 2 years something happens and I lose everything? But it doesn't have to be like that.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I think often it's better when it's not all or nothing. It can be any part in a spectrum. It can be 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, right?
Yeah.
5 out of 5. But yeah, definitely, as you say, that conversation has to be a part of it. You can't just give someone the rule book and expect them to respect that.
Yeah.
Especially if they're your equal, if they're your co-founder, or close to your equal, part of your co-founding team. I always think respect, give it, get it. If you want your team to respect you, you have to give them that as well. And so bringing them into that conversation when you're setting out the rule book, those ground rules, yeah, it's a good thing to do collaboratively. Although, of course, ultimately, there's usually one person who has the final say.
You mentioned Agile Partnerships, right? I think a lot of people, when they think of, I need to do some sort of legal binding document / contract / agreement with the co-founder, they think about it like that. But there's this concept of Agile Partnership. What is Agile Partnership document actually?
So, an Agile Partnership is a task agreement which is tied into conditional equity. There's a lot of jargon there. It basically means that you can set out what your responsibilities are, often as a co-founder, but sometimes as the early founding team as well, such that you earn the equity as you deliver on those particularly pre-agreed
tasks. Task agreement, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it means that you can go into things with the best intentions and hopefully you come out with it with what you expected. But if something happens, something changes, life happens, things change, your idea pivots for that matter. Life's not predictable. It's good to be agile. And if you have the kind of structure which allows for that, it can be very powerful and also, very importantly, protecting the relationship, protecting the business as well.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't deliver on something, that's okay, because they're not then being rewarded with something that they haven't earned. So it reduces that kind of potential for bitterness and things going sour.
Yeah, it's written, pen on paper, ink on paper, how they say it, right?
Digitally usually, but yes.
Yeah.
Pen on paper.
But I think that's very key, right? So you have a set of tasks in that agreement, or objectives, goals, that deliverable. Exactly. I think deliverables is the right word here. That you commit on delivering, usually by set time, right? I think it's good to have also marks, like time marks.
Yeah.
By in 6 months from now, you as a co-founder would have delivered XYZ, and then in 6 months from then you'll be delivering this, that, and then like breaking down the stake, the shares distribution that you have into those time boxed based on your achievements at that point. And it's quite flexible, right? So I think that's why it's called Agile Partnership. So you can set up a variety of rules. But the one thing that I found, because I've done this recently, and I've done it through Vested, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But I think the one thing that I've been advised by your awesome team at Vested was to be as specific as possible
Yeah.
and not very fuzzy about the rules.
Yeah.
Because if you're fuzzy about the rules, your interpretation of done might not be the same, the different person's interpretation of done, of a task or of a deliverable being done. So the more specific you can be on those tasks, the better. Now
Like
it's also
smart goal. Right?
yeah, exactly. It's also it's a weird balance because it's a weird thing to balance. What I mean is because when you start with a co-founder, and this is from experience, you start planning certain tasks, and in 1 month from now, half of them change, become irrelevant, change to something else, and so on. So I'm curious, how do you handle that? Because, like, for example, for me, I think it was very specific what my founding team, what the responsibility was there, because we're not, in this with Masterwork in this startup, innovative, fast pace, everything changes overnight type of business. It's a lot more. It's a
Predictable.
path. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a path that you take, right? But a lot of startups are not like that.
Yeah, exactly. And the path for each business, each organization, each journey is going to be different. And I would say that, timing is important. In most of the kind of, those startups that we're referring to with a huge amount of variability, it's unlikely it's a good idea to set these things up, on day one. But still fairly early on, when you've got a feel for, you've had these conversations, who's going to be responsible for, your technical side, your marketing side, your sales side, your team management side. When you have more of an idea of these things, though to be fair, team management, that might be later down the line. When you've got an idea of those base responsibilities, that's when you can start to put these things into an agile partnership. It could be 2 months in, could be 6 months in, could even, I wouldn't say a year in, I think that's too late, but bearing in mind that it's flexible. It doesn't have to be exactly as you want it to be. It doesn't have to be exactly
Very specific in day one, you mean?
Exactly.
And cool. So, but what happens, for example, if so what happens let's say if you don't set the rules, very specific rules from day one, do you still put together an agile partnership from day one, or do you delay agreeing a stake with a co-founder until later down the road? And then if that happens, that means that they might be doing some work where they don't have like the assurance that they're going to get anything for the work that they do.
Yeah, I would say that you start thinking about these things even subconsciously from the beginning. You start thinking, okay, this person's going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing this.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing that. And then some of that as well, when you say about doing things that is outside of what may be in that task agreement, it doesn't have to be confined in that way. And oftentimes the journey of a founder, the role of a founder, co-founder, will vary so much from what you initially think it's going to be.
Yeah.
And again, when the overall business, growing that is the aim, people are more likely to do things that are outside of, say, potentially that remit. But I would say that early on, from day one, you'll be thinking about these things whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
The sooner you can put it into a common agreement together, the better.
I think it's also there's a chance that it depends on the type of startup business. There's a chance that in the early day everything is so hectic and so random that the only way to set up an agreement with your co-founder is to have something that's more related to achievements rather than specific deliverables, right? It's gonna be a bit more fuzzy, but in the same time, it's difficult if you're in that space where, the other thing is you don't want to tie yourself into very specific tasks,
Yeah.
and you realize, but we don't need to do those tasks.
Yeah.
Oh, but I still need to do them because they're really relevant, but I still need to do it because of the Agile Partnership.
Yeah.
So it really depends. But there's two types of startup businesses I see often. It's ones that are very hectic in the early days, in the exploration and discovery and concepts and prototypes phase. Everything's so chaotic, and then there's on the other side. They're businesses, they're startups where they know they need to build the MVP.
Yeah.
They know what they need to do for the next 6 months. Afterwards it gets a bit fuzzier.
Yeah.
So for those, I think you're in a position where you can set specific deliverables for basically for the first wave of the shares, the stake that each of you get. It's like, well, in 6 months I'm doing this, you're doing that, and we're gonna get allocated this much equity from the pool. And then for the next 6 months, it might be fuzzier,
Yeah.
and
You
that's
can do more.
yeah,
You can tie it to even just like simple time-based
yeah,
metrics.
yeah. You're right. So you can do like, oh, well, we don't really know what exactly tasks, deliverables we're gonna have after 6 months. Let's just put it into, we each spend 2 hours per day working on the business.
Yeah. Or we're each contributing to this in whatever ways that we've agreed for the next 3 years, for the next 2 years, for the next 5 years. But yeah, I would say as well, going back to the conversations that you have with your co-founder when you might be dating them, whatever, having an understanding of what they see over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, being brutally honest, unreservedly honest about what you want to get out of this venture, what it means to you, what other variables there are in your life as well. These are all the things that you've just got to be open about, got to talk about.
And that saying of "it sounds too good to be true" stands here as well when you're co-founder dating. If one of you or both of you or y'all constantly talk excitement and it's gonna be like this and everything is rainbows and Skittles, I think that's a bit too, that's a red flag, right? So if you don't think of what could go wrong with your business and you don't go through that risk assessment conversations, then that's not a very mature first kind of conversations that you're having.
How do
right?
you expect to have them later down the line when things are difficult?
Yeah.
When you can't do them, if you can't do them now.
Yeah.
When
exactly.
things are easier and things are exciting.
And you should, because then it kind of grounds you as well, rather than going at this with your, take me business world, right? And plunge.
Yeah.
You're actually if you're having that risk assessment conversations, you're actually treading a bit more careful. Okay, I'm more calculated about certain things.
Yeah.
So that's important. Made a bit of detour here, but I wanted to get to. We talked about agile partnerships. Sounds like the perfect type of agreement for co-founders and whoever in leadership or advisors of your business. Perfect type of setup to have. I have them with Masterwork. How do people get into agile partnerships and these kind of agreements? Because when I think about it, right, when you tell someone, well, you need to make an agreement where you lay down the rules and the allocations of shares over time, blah, it all of a sudden gets what I say gets like muffled, and people think legal costs.
Yeah.
Because it is, right? So it's something bespoke. It's not like something you download a template from the internet an agreement from the internet and both sign it, you have no idea what you signed because you just downloaded a template from the internet, right?
Yeah.
So how, and I don't know the answer to this because I'm using this agreement, but just let's talk a bit about your option. I would say the less uh, the less expensive and less what's the word,
Hassle.
yeah, the less hassle, the version with less hassle.
Simplified.
Yeah,
Simplified version.
frictionless.
Yeah.
A bit less friction. Let's call it
Yeah.
less friction
Yeah, less
version.
friction.
Because when you know sitting down with a lawyer and so on, one of the things that I've noticed, you work with a lot of lawyers at Vested and so on. So
Sometimes.
you have to, because you're setting up all of these systems and so on.
Yeah.
Have you? I don't know if you personally, but have you ever heard of this the story, or have you ever experienced where you're sitting down with a lawyer and you're asking them, solicitor or whatever, and you're asking them to explain the specific clause in the agreement for you to understand it because you don't understand it because it's lawyer jargon, and they explained it and you're still confused? Like,
Yeah. I think that people want to be absolute. They don't necessarily want to add inference or additional material if it's not there. Highly technical people. Is that what you mean?
yeah. Because I work with lawyers, corporate lawyers, and all sorts of lawyers and professionals in the legal world. And again, it's every single time I need a sit down to go through something that a lawyer wrote, be it my own or the opposite party wrote. I feel that it's a bit of a hassle because, and no offense, like lawyers they have a purpose, and if
Absolutely.
we would be living in a world without lawyers, we would be
Scary world.
it would be a dystopian world, right? Fair to say, if we didn't have the ability to interpret a legal system and so on, it would be terrible. But my point that I'm trying to make is having back and forth conversations, emails, calls constantly to get an agreement nailed down, and for you to be confident that you have that agreement nailed down, can be cumbersome quite often.
Absolutely.
So that's why I'm saying, let's talk about what Vested does, because I'm using Agile Partnerships on the Vested platform, and I've been using Vested before you even had Agile Partnerships and so on for the distribution of share options at Jigsaw back in the days. So what is this Agile Partnerships feature on Vested platform? And maybe just a quick introduction of Vested overall, and how does it help founders and startups?
Yeah, of course. Vested with the ShareTech platform for startups and more, but particularly when setting up conditional equity agreements. So your share options when you want to reward your team, your co-founder prenups, aka Agile Partnerships. So when you're attaching equity, shares or share options in the business to deliverables, be these particular milestones or time-based. Vested helps you do that. We have our two-way API integration with Companies House, which makes it very simple, and we're also authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, so you're in safe hands when you're doing it with Vested. It is the spiel.
And I think some of my audience here would find that very familiar, because we had Ifti, your founder. He's a founder. He's not a co-founder.
So he is one of the co-founders.
Co-founders, okay.
Yeah. But he's our founder for most intents and purposes.
We had Ifti on Misfit Founders podcast, and we talked quite a bit about his journey into starting Vested, and I think it's a brag, right? The fact that you were the first regulated business in UK to do these sorts of activities and tasks, which is, you said share tech, and I want to elaborate and explain that a bit for maybe people that are like, share what? You're referring to having a platform that automates a lot of the having access to a platform that automates a lot of the legal logistical tasks of you generating shares in your organization.
Exactly.
Did I make it justice the way I'm explaining it?
I think so. What's been built by the team makes it really simple for founders, early stage businesses, as well as more complex later stage businesses, SMEs. It makes it simple to do whatever it is you're looking to do with your equity, with your shares. Largely, this is built around the company's house integration, because when it comes to shareholdings, the source of truth is company's house.
Yeah.
So when your vested account is plugged into the company's house API, that two-way API, you can have that single source of truth. So if you have just, say, welcomed some investment, you can transfer some shares, or you can transfer some of those shares to your investors, or you can authorize and create new shares, and then have those assigned to those individuals, all through the platform. And then in the background, we look after all of the paperwork filings, largely by automation, which then feed through to Companies House, making sure that your business remains compliant as you make all of these changes to your shareholdings.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. When I found the platform, I was like, oh wow, this exists. And I remember this was in 2021, right? And I knew that I wanted to offer EMI and unapproved share options to the team whenever we were getting new people in. I'm like, oh man, I need to figure out a lawyer. I talked to a couple of people, and then I bumped into vested, and I'm like, me, the person that wants to do stuff on their own and have access and I was so obsessed at that point. I'm still obsessed with SaaS tools, right?
Yeah.
Give me a good SaaS tool that does something, and I don't need humans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So because it's just that the ease of access, and we were talking about product led and so on, right? You're on a platform, you do stuff, you get stuff delivered and so on. And when you're a startup founder, that is a blessing. Not having to sit down with an advisor, a counsel, consultant, talk to them, and then having to pay money here, because you're paying your accountant, you're paying this, you're paying that, and then you realize
traveling to the location to meet them.
Yeah, exactly. And you're spending so much time and energy where all you want to do when you're a startup founder is decrease as much as possible the time that you spend on logistical stuff,
The friction.
the time and money that you spend that, and just focus on delivering an early product that's good and makes money, right?
Yeah.
When you're at a different level, then you can start hiring more people to take on some of the logistical stuff. So when I found vested, I was, and by all means, I want to make it very clear here on the podcast. You're not sponsoring Misfit Founders. I'm not being paid or promoted to say any of this. There's a couple of platforms that I always advertise, even when I was working on Jigsaw. Well, I was kind of like the lowest paid employee in a sense. So working at Jigsaw, it was Deal.
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever heard of Deal?
Yeah. HR.
Yeah. So contracts, agreements with the team and so on, and also online payments remote, made my life so much easier. And then there was vested, which was I can allocate shares to the team. I can increase the valuation of the company based on our numbers and so on, and the team can log in and check their share options that they own and check the estimated value of the shares. And I was like, these tools are amazing, and especially because I've always been a big promoter of reward your team. So, well, I would rather give people equity so they feel like they have vested interest in the company.
They have a slice of the pie.
Yeah, exactly.
And skin in the game.
Exactly. And also for us, it was very important that transparency. Every quarter, we would look at, we also taught our team how to calculate the valuation and so on, but we were also looking at very transparent with how much money, revenue we're making. What does that mean for our valuation? What does that mean ultimately for their shares? And, a lot of people, and especially larger companies, frown upon that. But I think there might be negatives, but for me, it's very important for each individual in the team to understand their work, how it impacts,
material impact,
not how it impacts the company. Because I think founders have this grandeur thing about themselves and their company. Of like, oh, you're contributing to the company is growing thanks to you, and so on. No, I don't want. I want people to see, because again, going back,
what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. How they're impacting their
empowering
own well-being in the long run,
Yeah.
right? So because we're going back to the whole idea of your team and your employees will not care as much as you about your company, because they don't own it, right?
Until they're a part of that game, with the equity piece.
Exactly.
And then their whole relationship changes.
Yeah, and when you're able to constantly actively see, oh, it has been another month, let me see how much my stock, my share options is valued. And on the platform, you can do that.
Yeah,
you have, you know how many share options you got allocated.
How many you'll get in the next 6 months or so, next
exactly.
2 years. But yeah, definitely. And I would say as well, it comes back to, equity inclusion and making sure that it's not just, say, the founding team or senior leadership that have a slice of the pie, aka shares, share options in the business, equity in the business. It is everyone that contributes to growing the value of the business gets some kind of stake in that. And it might not be the same as, those previously mentioned groups of people, but it's still something to also honor that as well.
Yeah.
In this day and age, it is, I think people are becoming increasingly aware of these kind of matters. But yeah, so equity inclusion, big one. Transparency, also another big one, that has been at the heart of what we're trying to put into the world. But also coming back to that accessibility piece. So whilst when you have your more mature businesses, they might have all the time and the funds for the counsel, the accountants, etc. We're trying to make this as accessible as possible for your early stage businesses to integrate the equity into their strategy, be it through a co-founder prenup, share options, share schemes, even through to the fundraising aspect of things. We want to make it as simple as possible for them to be able to do these things. They don't have to wait for replies from their accountant, at least not for this particular thing. They don't have to take the time and the expense of a lawyer. For these kind of things, they can do it themselves, be it 3 a.m, middle of the night, that's when they've got their spare time, they're logging into their account.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love being able to just go and sign in at 3 a.m. and sign off an agreement or doing something like that. That's
maybe not the best time. Start drafting it.
Yeah, but it's great that you're able to do that. I also wanted to mention, it's not with a tool like Vested, a lot of the details in those agreements that are templatized, and then you have a lot of options to customize those agreements, and you can add certain information and you fill in these forms and you make it the way you want it to be for your team. But you're also not alone on that journey, because, and this is one of the things that I love about Vested, and that's why I'm bragging. I never brag about tools that feel cold and inhuman in a sense, right? But I always brag about customer support and people on the other side working. And so I have this ethos about people connect with people, right?
Yeah.
So you also have a team, like a very well educated in anything HMRC and shares and stocks and so on, team that is there to help you. So, like for example, if you're trying to put together an agile partnership with your co-founder, and you're scratching your head about some details and the validity of some details, or whether what does this specific field means and so on. If you're fuzzy about certain details, you can also get help from the team at Avesta. So it's not like fully automated.
No.
We like you just do your stuff and we don't care.
No, we're equity specialists, equity consultants. Everyone has some kind of technical knowledge and ability there. So yeah, especially those that are on the support team, helping our clients.
Yeah.
There is always that human element, and that's also a core part of our philosophy, the guided side of things. So yeah, exactly as you say, if you want to do 90% of it yourself using the automations, then 10% you're getting someone to have a look over things, make sure it all looks fine, just chatting to them, bouncing some ideas off them. We have the ability to do that, and pretty proud of it.
Cool. Is there anything that you want to add to this before I close it? I want to make a summary of everything that we've discussed before closing. Anything else that you want to add?
I'd say thank you so much for having me here, Biro. It's been great session.
Thank you for joining. Again, I wanted to do something a bit more different. I'm going to talk to the anyone that's listening, if there's 1-2 people that are listening and watching. I wanted to tailor this conversation more on the whole concept around co-founding your business with an individual, the risks, the benefits, and how to go about it. And the reason why this entire conversation was revolved around that topic is because, again, this is the one topic that I find myself talking to founders over and over, either on this podcast or mentors on in person. And it's a very important topic because this could potentially be the rest of your life, right? So being able to figure out what you have to do, need to do, and should do around starting a business with someone else, we were talking about this, is a partnership, is a marriage, and you want to do it right. So from finding someone that is compatible with you and you're compatible with them, and you understand that you'll be able to work with them for a very extended period of time. This is the person that you'll see the most often after your partner, right? And your kids, if you have kids. So we covered all of that and ways of finding the right person, and then making sure that you have an agreement, a prenup in a sense, that gives you the peace of mind and creates that level of harmony in your business. And as we talked with Amber just now, it's not just you and that business partner that gets impacted. It's your team, your customers, your investors, your partners. So it is crucial you get this right. But I think we also live in a world nowadays where you have access to a lot of information. It's not impossible or rocket science to go through a co-founder dating process that's well put together to give you that confidence. And it's not difficult or impossible to put together an agreement between the 2, 3, 4 of you that give you that peace of mind and harmony as you start building the next big thing. So yeah, that's why I wanted to have this conversation. And again, thank you so much, Amber, for doing this.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll... Oh, and one last thing. I mentioned this entire episode is not sponsored or anything like that, but you and your team at Vested were kind enough to give a bit of a benefit, a perk to
Yeah.
the Misfit Founders audience. So we do have a discount code. If you want to try vested platform, if you want to do, put together an agreement with your co-founder, or maybe you have a team that you want to reward with share options. Maybe you want to do a cap table and, visualize and submit automatically stuff to HMRC and not have to do it manually. There's
Fundraising, shareholdings.
fundraising as well. That's a thing now on the platform. So you're able to automate a lot of these legal proceedings bits around shares and stock in the platform. You get a discount code, give it a try, and feel free to just go and in the comment section and let me know what your thoughts are.